your personality or your state of being is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. And so you can have all the strategies for change or evolution or influence. But if you keep thinking, acting, and feeling in the same old, conditioned, habitual ways, you're going to keep producing the same old results. So you learned in the training to make change, you got to think differently. You have to think newly. And you also learned, Kylie, that human beings, we have between 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And research shows us that 90% of those thoughts are the same regurgitated thoughts as the day before, the week, month, year, decades before. So, one of the questions we ask, if you think that your thoughts have anything to do with your destiny or your future, then if you don't change the way you think, and 90% of your thoughts, and you have about 70,000 of them, are the same as yesterday, your future is going to look a lot like your past.
Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of the Property Management Podcast. Thank you so much for having me in your ears. And this episode is one that's incredibly personal, deeply transformative, and honestly a little vulnerable to share. We're diving into something that has completely changed the way I think, act, feel, and show up, not just as a business owner, but as a mum, a leader, and a woman navigating this big, beautiful, sometimes chaotic life and crazy industry. A little while ago, I had the privilege of attending the Change Your Mind 2-day immersive training, and it was unlike anything I've ever done before. And I've done a lot. I've done the workshops, the retreats, seen the healers and therapists. I've bought all the online courses, but this one really hit home. And it's based on the powerful neuroscience principles inspired by the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza. This training challenged me in the best way to let go of old stories, to shift my thinking, and finally start rewiring the patterns that were keeping me stuck. And the woman behind this experience, well, she's an absolute force of nature. Tanja Lee is the CEO of the Evolution Agents, a neuro change solutions consultant, master NLP practitioner, and a globally recognized leadership and mindset specialist. She's also an incredibly kind, generous, and loving human as well. And for over a decade, she's been coaching, mentoring, and transforming the lives of thousands of real estate professionals across the globe, helping them lead with more presence, purpose, and power. Tanja's work is all about redefining excellence in our industry, not just through strategy, but through inner evolution. Because the truth is, your business can only grow as far as you do. So in this episode, we dive into what neuroscience is and what it tells us about real lasting change, why so many of us feel stuck in cycles of stress and burnout and self-doubt and overwhelm, and how we can rewire our brains to lead differently with more clarity, confidence, and calm. So this conversation is for you if you're ready to evolve personally and professionally. If you know there's a next level inside you, but you've been too busy, too tired, or too stuck in survival mode to reach it. This work honestly changed me and deeply changed me. And my hope is that it opens something up for you too. So let's dive in to this conversation with the incredible Tanja Lee. Tanja, thank you so much for joining me on the Property Management Podcast. I am super excited to have you here, and I cannot wait to dive into all things neuroscience and changing lives. But before we get into all the nitty-gritty, can you share with our audience a little bit about yourself and how you got started doing the work that you do?
Oh, sure. Thank you so much, first of all, Kylie. It's a pleasure to be here with you and your gorgeous audience. So my name is Tanja Lee. I run a business called the Evolution Agents, and we teach real estate leaders and teams how to de-stress, achieve success, and amplify their influence using the proven concepts of neuroscience first of all, it's probably a good place to start. What is neuroscience? Because it's a big word that can be intimidating for some people. Really simply, it's the study of how our brain and nervous system influence the way we think, the way we act, and the way we feel, and how we interact or react with our environment. I'm not a real estate agent. I started my journey in real estate in 2014 as a vendor that was really underwhelmed with the experience of listing and selling my family home. At the time, I was a peak performance coach for entrepreneurs in different industries. I was looking for a niche to really focus my skills and experience in and make a difference. And after that underwhelming experience, I thought, I don't want to become another dissatisfied statistic that complains about agents at barbecues. I wanted to be part of the solution and a positive contribution, and had 35 years experience working in the corporate, private, retail, government sector and customer service. And I just felt that there was a gravity to listing and selling or leasing and renting that required more than certainly I got. And from the research I've done, I wasn't alone. So fast forward 10 years later, I've had the privilege of working with over 300 brands and thousands of property and real estate professionals across Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the States, and now really narrowing our focus on just improving the quality of life. Because what we know, and I'm sure we'll get into, is there's two states that we can be in. We can be in a state of stress and survival, or in a state of innovation and growth. And one of the things I've learned over the last 10 years is I've never met a business owner or a BDM or head of growth that doesn't want to grow themselves, their people in their business. And there's no shortage of strategies and tools and coaches and tech, but strategy is not going to make the difference if we're in a state of stress and survival. Because if we're in that state, we're not in the state for innovation and growth. We're not in the state to prospect. We're not in a state to recruit. So there's a lot of potential out there that's waiting to be untapped.
Absolutely. And look, I just did a training with you recently, end of last year. And I think we can start with that training, because has actually been a game changer for me. And I'm not just saying that as a cliche and just because you're on here. And there's so many things that we can unpack around how that did really deeply impact me and the way that I think. And I guess the thing I will say is I've done a lot of the work. I've seen the healers, I've seen therapists, I've done the meditations, I've done the journaling, and it made all small changes, but nothing made a big, deep, impactful change like the training I did with you. And I realize it's because I was still thinking the same way. And that's where it all starts, doesn't it? So if you want to just break that down a little bit for us, why that penny took so long to drop for me.
Yeah, the training that you're speaking about is a 2-day training developed by international lecturer, researcher, best-selling author, Dr. Joe Dispenza. And it's called Change Your Mind, Create New Results. And it is the neuroscience of change. And you raise a good point there where you said, I've gone to the therapist and I've done the meditation and, I've done this course or this training and it just didn't move the needle. And you realize because you were thinking the same. And that's a good point, because one of the things that this training teaches is your personality or your state of being is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. And so you can have all the strategies for change or evolution or influence. But if you keep thinking, acting, and feeling in the same old conditioned habitual ways, you're going to keep producing the same old results. So you learned in the training to make change, you got to think differently. You have to think newly. And you also learned, Kylie, that human beings, we have between 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And research shows us that 90% of those thoughts are the same regurgitated thoughts as the day before, the week, month, year, decades before. So, one of the questions we ask, if you think that your thoughts have anything to do with your destiny or your future, then if you don't change the way you think, and 90% of your thoughts, and you have about 70,000 of them, are the same as yesterday, your future is going to look a lot like your past. So becoming aware of what you're thinking about and the quality of those thoughts is a really great place to start if you want to learn how to change.
Absolutely. One of the other things that I took away from the training as well, and you mentioned it briefly before, and that was talking about the stress and how
Yes.
we live in either survival or in creation. And that really hit home for me because, and I think if we can maybe talk about the stress of, it's not just the stress of our businesses, it's the stressful world that we're now living in, and maybe tap into that and some of the ways that we can maybe mitigate that, because stress is unavoidable. We're all going to have stress. But what are some of the ways that we can deal with stress based on
Yeah.
the work that you do?
Yeah, such an important question, particularly for those that work and play in the property management space, because we know 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, when that phone rings, it's typically a problem, issue, challenge, or concern that you are now responsible for resolving and you didn't create it. And there's a lot of heightened states. So, just to clarify for you that's listening, when Kylie says you can live in a state of stress or you can live in a state of creation, what we mean there is living in flow, living in the zone, living in a space of innovation, and you're in homeostasis or balance and order. And I'll get to that. But living in stress is living in survival. And Kylie, that's essentially where our brain and body are knocked out of homeostasis, knocked out of balance and order. And we're in the fight, flight, freeze mechanism. And typically there's three stresses in life. There's physical stress. So this could be traumas, accidents, injuries, falls, sprains, breaks, pregnancy. There could be chemical stress, pesticides, pollutants, toxins, viruses, molds, alcohol, drugs, blood sugar levels, radiation, Wi-Fi, you name it, vaping, smoking, all of those sort of chemical stresses. And then there's emotional stress, traffic jams, internet connections, second mortgages, single parenting, aggressive and abusive rental providers, legislation changes, multiple problems at short compressed times. All of these three things will knock us out of balance and order and will activate the stress response, where all of our energy, attention, and focus goes towards attacking and defending if we're in fight mode, running away and avoiding responsibility, or hiding and procrastinating. However, we can turn on that stress response just by thought alone. So we can think about that property, that rental provider that has 10 properties that left our business last week. We can worry about our top senior property manager leaving our business the following month. And the brain and the body is so objective, Kylie, they don't know the difference between a real life threat and stress that's happening in the moment, or the feelings that are being fabricated just by thought alone, by recalling a memory or anticipating the worst case scenario. So we can literally knock our body out of homeostasis by thinking about memories or anticipating the worst case scenario. And short-term stress is fine, as you learned in the training, Kylie. Like if you're driving to work and a car runs a red light and you're across the road, you need to mobilize an enormous amount of energy really quickly to literally save your life. So it's there for our survival, and we need it to survive, because after a few minutes, our heart rate will go down, our palms will dry out from the sweat that activated pretty quickly, and our respiratory system will relax, and our cognitive functionality will return back to a normal state. But if we're in a chronic state of stress, or what we call long-term stress, where your brain is in high beta brain waves, so you lose cognitive functionality, your heart rate is increased, your blood pressure rises, your respiratory system is compromised, the blood that is feeding your vital internal organs is getting shunted to the extremities of your body, so you can fight, you can run, or you can hide. Staying in that state for long periods of time drains our energy and actually depletes our vital life force. And what we know, and what the physiological model and research is showing, is human beings, regardless of industry or role, are in these states between 70 to 80% of the time. What does this actually mean? Well, bad health, bad decisions, highly emotional. We become very self-centric because we're in survival. So empathy and communication and collaboration and innovation, all of these qualities that have us create growth or live and lead great lives, out the window, because our focus is just on staying alive. And that's the normal human condition that people are experiencing right now.
Yeah, and can totally relate to that. After your training, I realized nothing changed the first couple of days, but until the penny dropped, that I was actually addicted to stress. And
yes,
the body gets addicted to stress because of the hormones that it releases, doesn't it? So can you maybe explain that? Once I realized that, and even now, like for me today, I probably have been jumping from task to task. And I went and actually just sat there before I jumped on here with you and just did some breath work because I felt my stress levels and my stomach churning, and I knew that was the first sign of it. But yeah, dive into that a little bit.
Such an important topic, and good on you for recognizing you are in those states, because you made a big comment. You said, I realized I was addicted to the chemicals of stress. That's a mic drop moment, because as I said earlier, we are in states of stress unbeknownst to us around 70 to 80% of the time. And how do you know? Your body is telling you. So you've got the tight stomach or the constricted throat or the sweaty palms, or you're all tense, or you can't think clearly, can't speak effectively. This is why people's mouth gets dry, because your salivary glands dry up when you're nervous, and people get like that when they're public speaking because they're in a state of stress. So good that you've got those cues, but you want to be able to recognize what's going on. And you said you realized through the training you were addicted to the chemicals. And this is where the psychological model says that when we're feeling anxious and stressed and overwhelmed and jealous and irritated and envious and all these different emotions, we get addicted to the chemicals that are actually being produced in those states. And the psychological model, as I started saying before, said these states of being are normal. And the thing that we're teaching in neuroscience and through Dr. Joe's work is there is nothing normal about those states. They are abnormal, altered states of being. We do, though, when we're in these states of stress, be it from physical stress, chemical stress, or emotional stress, or the stress we're creating by thought alone, we produce chemicals. And typically it's cortisol and adrenaline. And the thing when we're stressed, when we've got cortisol and adrenaline running through our system, we feel very alert, we're very alive, we're very awake, and we're very aroused. And that's a highly stimulated way to be. And it's like you've had a double shot, espresso. And so that state of being is very addictive. And if we get stuck in what we call a thinking, feeling loop, where you're thinking about a memory or you're anticipating the worst case scenario, you're flooding your body with cortisol and adrenaline, your body's getting really aroused, that feeling comes back up the 5 neural pathways and sends a signal to the brain to keep thinking those thoughts. And then to your point,
That's
Kylie,
right. I forgot about that. Yes. That's
so
the cycle.
we get addicted to that state. Now, we're not addicted to feeling insecure or unhappy or jealous. We're addicted to the sensation that's happening in our body. And we don't even know that we are getting addicted. Through the training, when I was becoming certified, as I shared in the training with you, Kylie, and the crew in Brisbane, I realized through this work that I personally was addicted to being disappointed in myself. I didn't know that, but this is the beauty of neuroscience, is you cannot change what you cannot see. And through this work, you get to see, what are you thinking about? How does that influence your actions and behaviors? And how do you feel? Because when you're feeling things, you're having emotions, and emotions produce chemicals, and the chemicals are the hormones that flood your body. And that's what we get addicted to. And people think they're normal states of being, and it's actually not. And it's not a matter of if we get sick, it's a matter of when, because no organism is designed to live in emergency mode 24/7, but most of us are. And we're drinking coffee on top, and our sleep is compromised, and we're on social media. And to your point before this podcast, that your brain was, or you were going from task to task, You listening probably live like that every day. You go from phone call to meeting to move your car because your office is in a 2-hour car park. And then you got to go to that appointment and send that email. And that creates a state of incoherence in our brain where it's almost like the Mac computer is open with too many tabs and the color wheel of death is spinning and the brain can't process anything more and the body's in a state of stress. And we are just not in optimal state because we can't think clearly, we can't problem solve effectively, our emotions are high, which is our intelligence is low, and we're in survival. So it's really hard to be genuinely curious about somebody else's perspective when we are just trying to defend ourselves unconsciously all the time.
I wish I had have done this training 10 years ago when I had adrenal fatigue, when I had ended up in and out of hospital for 2 years with heart condition. And it was all, the doctors could not put it down to anything. All this, I saw every heart, because I couldn't believe that somebody my age, somebody in my fitness level. And so I had every heart test done you can imagine. And the only thing that they put it down to was long-term ongoing stress.
Yeah, hear about it. Yeah. Young man, young woman, fit, non-smoker, doesn't drink, runs every day, drops dead. Yeah. It's like, how does this happen? And it's a big word, stress. We are hearing more and more that stress is the number one killer of humanity. And the irony is there are all these external stresses. But what rocked and shocked me when I learned this training is we are turning on the stress response just by thought alone. Every time you think about that memory that's etched in the recesses of your brain, whether it's that rental provider that told you off, or your husband or wife or partner that broke up with you, or a car accident, or some trauma that happened, every time you think about it, or every time you fly fish into the future of your fears and worry about the worst case scenario, which we are designed to do, the brain as an organ is designed to look for the threat because it's designed to keep us alive. What we must know is every time we recall that memory or every time we play that movie in our mind of what might happen, our and body, Kylie, are so objective, they don't know the difference. So it's like we are experiencing it in real life. And that's why we must become conscious of what we're thinking about or what we're speaking about, because we're producing the chemicals that are associated with the quality of what we're seeing in the movie of our mind. And so, A, I wish I had done this training 10 years ago. And B, I'm really glad you did it because we need you around much longer.
So let's talk about then, because a lot of people, like, I know I'm guilty. I live in the past.
Nice catch. And can I just say here, what Kylie just demonstrated is metacognition, meaning Kylie was so aware of the words that came out of her mouth when they came out of her mouth. She saw that her statement or her declaration, which is a definitive comment, determines who she is. And she caught herself creating a future that she wasn't committed to, stopped it and said, oh, no, I did that in the past. That is something that you learn in the training, is to become aware of what you're thinking and speaking about. I just didn't want to let that. No. That's the work at work. You're demonstrating Absolutely. The work at work. Boom shakalaka to you, Missy Moo.
Thank you. So I did live in the past and I did worry about the future a lot. So let's talk about how do we not be in those two places and come back to our presence. What are some processes? Obviously, consciousness, being aware of it is the starting point.
That's the key. As the saying goes, this moment is a gift. That's why it's called the present. So how do we stay in a relaxed state or in homeostasis and reduce stress? Is we must stay in the present moment. Easier said than done, because 80% of people, what do they do within 3 seconds of waking, Kylie?
They're thinking the same thoughts as yesterday.
That's right. We wake up and we see our partner or reach for our phone or the weather or our environment, and we are plugged in through our senses to the third dimensional reality, and we start regurgitating the problems in our life. We start thinking about what happened yesterday. We jump onto whatever app we're on and we start comparing our butt to the Kardashians, or see who didn't swipe left or right on those dating apps, or look at all those emails, and boom, there we are. We're in a state of stress. this is where we've got to become greater than our body. And there's two ways to do that. We've got to be aware of the conditioning process that connects us to the past and the formulation of habits that connect us to the predictable future. So how do we do that? We got to become really present in the here and now, because as Dr. Joe said, it's the sweet spot of the generous present moment. So you've got to become aware of your state of being. How in the past did you think? How did you act? And how did you feel? Because you cannot change what you cannot see. And neuroscience is the study of how our brain and nervous system work. So we want to become aware of what are we thinking about? Because if my thoughts have something to do with my destiny and I'm repeating the same thoughts over and over, like 90% of the time, I need to become crystal clear about what I'm thinking about and how I, to your point before, how I no longer want to think, how I no longer want to act, and how I no longer want to feel, and get that really clear and do a bit of like self-reflection. But that's only the first part. The second part is, how do I want to think? What kind of mind do I want to have? And this is where we create in the work, you get to become a genius, or you get to create your future self. How does future Kylie think? How does she act and behave, and how does she feel, and become conscious of it, but more so consciously create it? So instead of waking up and just going into your phone and letting all the stimulus in your environment, the people and objects and things and times and places govern who you are, the best thing you can do is wake up and intentionally create who you're going to be. Intentionally design how he or she thinks, how he or she acts and behaves, and how she or he feels, and then meditate. And there's a particular meditation that we teach in the training that helps you unfire and unwire the old program self and change the software. So over time, it changes the hardware. So when you wake up, your habits aren't driving your behavior. You're consciously creating your day and therefore your destiny. And it's a learned skill. This is what we teach in the training, how to actually do it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm still doing it. I love it. It's become part of my daily morning routine. Like meditation and journaling has always been part of but it's different. Like I said, I just want to share that I wake up now and I don't reach for my phone. I first open my eyes, which is something that you shared as well, like opening your eyes and giving love to yourself first, not opening your eyes and thinking, oh, I didn't do that. I didn't get to the gym yesterday, or oh, I forgot to call that client back, or oh my God, what's my bank account looking like today? It's like loving myself, gratitude for opening my eyes and being alive for another day. Just really simple stuff. And taking a moment when your feet hit the ground and then doing the practice. And I've got my book and my journal here. Yeah. And it's good. One of the things that has been really powerful for me, and I go back to it in reflection a lot, was the video that you shared of the preacher with the person that he was talking to.
T.D. Jakes. Yeah.
And the person that was being bullied. And this is how I remembered it. But basically, it was a person who had been bullied. He was saying, are you going to let that one little thing that they said to you affect you and who you are for the rest of your life? Are you going to let that one person stop you from living the life that you deserve or you want to live? And oh my God, that just, and even now I get goosebumps and I feel,
I am tripling with goosebumps as you're speaking about this. So yeah, I love that you raised that. And Bishop T.D. Jakes talks about 38 years. It's one of the resources in the 2-day training that we show to illustrate. And certainly as a peak performance coach for a number of decades now, Kylie, I've worked with people whose potential is intact, their joy is capped, their happiness is blocked, their soul is trapped because they are still suffering from something that happened 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 or more years ago. And it's where, as we call, the body has become the mind, they've lost their free will, and they are stuck in the past, frozen in time. And this is the majority of people. And I don't say that with judgment. I say that with deep compassion, because our research shows that most of us are waking up as these beautiful, unlimited, unstoppable, creative beings. Yet most of us, and I say this with a deep amount of love, me included, are unconscious victims of circumstance, still suffering internally by something that happened decades ago. And knowing that is one thing, but knowing how to change and knowing how to make change a conscious practice, that's what you learn in the training, where you can learn a specific formula containing the power to make change a conscious practice in any and every area of your life, whether it's your health, your wealth, your relationships, your hobbies, passions, interests, business, leadership, communication, sex life, spirituality, faith, contribution, wherever you want more, you're going to learn a formula how to consciously create it. But you can't do it, as you learned, as the old self. And there is a formula. It's scientifically proven to work.
It does. It 100% does.
It's practice.
Yeah.
And you can't do it once. Like the saying, you don't go to the gym and do a workout and then find your six pack. Yeah, there's a few layers. So it is a practice, and it's a worthy pursuit and a noble endeavor, because I think too many people are suffering unnecessarily, and there's so much more to us seeing the light of day. And it's stuff we're not taught in school yet, how to live and lead an incredibly unlimited life where you fulfill your potential by thought alone.
Absolutely. Look, anyone listening, I can definitely share that some of the past stuff for me, that I'm working on something in my business, but it will take me back to something that happened and that moment. And it's a belief about myself that is stopping me. Nothing physical that I'm doing. It is purely a belief that I created about that certain situation that is stopping me in my future. Yeah. The stuff that's come up has been incredible, and I'd love to sit down with you and debrief on some 100%. Of it. But is there anything that I've missed that you wanted to share about the training? Maybe who's it for, and what have you got coming up this year? Are you doing more trainings?
Thank you for the opportunity. So Change Your Mind, Create New Results is a 2-day live training that was created by Dr. Joe Dispenza. If anyone is unfamiliar, Dr. Joe and his work, as I mentioned earlier, an international best-selling author, lecturer, researcher.
Is he a nice bloke? Because you went over there and trained with him, didn't you?
Yeah. Not only is he a nice bloke, he is the real deal. And what I love most about Dr. Joe is over 30 years ago, when he was hit by a truck as he was participating in a marathon, he ran a very successful chiropractic practice. And long story short, he had significant spinal damage. And I think it was about 4 different spinal specialists said to him, it's unlikely that you're going to walk again. And he was into studying the power of the mind and people's natural potential. And as a chiropractor running a successful practice, he knew the severity of his injury. However, it gives me the chills every time I speak about this. Rather than going under the knife, he made a conscious and very unpopular, controversial decision to use the power of his mind to heal his spine by thought alone. And he made a decision between him and Source or God, and said, if this works, as I believe it will, I will devote the rest of my life to studying and teaching my greatest understanding of the truth, so other people can remember their innate power and ability to heal themselves and create miracles. And his credit, he did, after 9 weeks and some physical rehab. He literally spent hours, Kylie, every single day laying flat, unable to move, literally visualizing the vertebra in his spine one by one, and all the nerves and all the intricacies in perfect alignment, to the point where if he got to the 3rd vertebra and got distracted by the bark of a dog, he would start again. So some days he would spend 4 hours, and he did that every single day. And wow, to the shock and surprise of the 4 surgeons and many other people, he healed and he walked by thought alone. Fast forward over 3 decades, there are now millions of people around the world that are literally, and I know this is going to sound unrealistic to maybe you that's listening. So don't take my word for it. Jump on Dr. Joe's website and you can see stories of transformation. But people, by thought alone and the practices that you learned in the training, are healing stage 4 cancer. 2 women have grown their thyroid back after having them removed in surgery. People are healing MS, chronic skin like psoriasis or eczema. Like, so many miracles are happening because we are tapping into our innate potential. He is a great bloke and he's the real deal. And as I said, the thing that I love most about him is over 3 decades later, he's still fulfilling on his promise and devoting his life to researching and sharing his best understanding of the truth. There's a number of scientific papers now that have been released that are demonstrating proven scientific evidence of the power of meditation and metacognition, which is becoming conscious of what you're thinking about. So the training really, it goes over 2 days. It happens live. We have a couple of open trainings at the time we're recording this podcast. One is happening in New Zealand, in Auckland, on the 5th and 6th of March, and our first one in Sydney on the 12th and 13th of March. And we release future trainings on our website, which is theevolutionagents.com. In the training, you're going to learn how to change, how to become greater than your environment, your body, and time. How many people listening to this say to themselves, maybe us included, I don't have enough time. If I only had more time, I wish I had more time. Will you learn to become greater than time? It's a big call. What does that mean? You get to learn how to be a creator of your reality and not a victim of circumstance. You learn about living in stress or living in creation and what that actually means. You learn how to be in the present moment, which is the only place to create, because that's where the unknown exists, because the past is the known and the future potentially is the known. So there's only one spot to create, which is to bring something into being from nothing. So you learn, how do you become a conscious creator of your life, of your work, of your passions and pursuits? You learn the biological model for change. We demystify what meditation is. There's the Tibetan translation of meditation, which is to become familiar with. So what do we want to become familiar with? Maybe the 60 to 70,000 thoughts we're having, because that's creating our future. So you got to become familiar with the program. You learn about the 3 brains, the neocortex, the limbic brain, and the cerebellum. And you learn which part of the brain, 95% of our identity is formed by the time we're 35. And we can't change by thought alone. We have to get beyond the analytical mind, because most people do self-analysis and they try to understand themselves by questioning, which is good for insight. It just doesn't create change. So you learn enough about the 3 brains to find out how they work, much like riding a bike. But more importantly, which part of the brain you need to access to change the old programs and change the conditioning and change your habits. And you'll learn how, if you want to become a $1 million agent, if you want to become a senior property manager, if you want to open your own business or learn how to develop a skill and be masterful at it, there is nothing you can't learn when you learn how to learn. And we teach you how to learn. And not only how to learn, but how to remember what you learn, because, yeah, you can forget.
Fire and wire.
That's it, fire and wire. You remember all the lingo?
Absolutely. And you are a true master at what you do, I have to say. Like, very impressive and very inspiring. I cannot encourage enough people to do this work with you. Like I said, it's absolutely been game-changing, and I am sharing it in my socials and different little things that that I've learned and that are coming to me. So if you do see changes in my socials, you can credit that to Tanja.
We just pass the baton on, right? Like, it's just information and it's worth spreading.
Absolutely. I think it's amazing work. So what's the best place for somebody? I think you mentioned your website. What's the best place for somebody to connect with you? And sorry, normally I would ask the question about personal development here, but I think just for personal development, go and do your course.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate your personal endorsement, especially because you've done it, Kylie. You can speak from your own experience. And I'm also eternally grateful. And on behalf of Dr. Joe and the whole team at NCS, which is Neuro Change Solutions, one of his 8 businesses, that there's over 300 consultants certified to teach this work. I thank you in advance for anything that you're sharing around it, because one of the things I believe, certainly in our industry, is there's no shortage of strategies. Most people know what they need to do to be successful or be fit or be healthy. But have you noticed that knowing what to do and doing it are two different things? You sharing this and helping people become aware that what the work really is to unwire those old habits and fire and wire some new ones. The best way to find out about our trainings is to jump on our website, theevolutionagents.com, or the Evolution Agents Instagram. We're pretty active there. You can DM me. And then, of course, Tanja Lee on LinkedIn. But the website will tell you a little bit about the training, show everything that you receive. It has our current training dates. If you're a leader and you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, I'm curious to find out more, this might be something we'd like to explore internally. So we have open trainings where anyone from any brand, any agency can come along. Or if you're wanting to do something internally, privately at your office, then amazing. We're more than happy to come and train your team, or at least have a conversation and a discovery call.
Yeah, and it is a great way to build a little community as well. The community we had in Brisbane, we've built a lovely little business community off that as well. Margarita Sisters.
Margarita Sisters, yes. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Absolutely. Tanja, thank you.
Sorry. I was going to say, just to your point, you make great friends because you're meeting like-minded people who genuinely want to connect. And it's easy to do when you're out of survival because you're not in self-preservation mode, because your heart's coherent and you're more curious. And yeah, the people that we're meeting along the way are pretty beautiful, yourself included.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Back at you. Tanja, thank you so much for joining me. I am super grateful that you've shared so much of your wisdom and value and love with our audience today.
Thank you so much for the privilege.
Can I ask you a quick favor before you leave this episode? Now, we all know how important reviews are for businesses these days, and mine is no different. If you could spare just a minute to follow, rate, and review this podcast, it would mean a lot to me. In fact, what would get me super excited is if you share this podcast with someone in the industry who you think might need to hear some of the episodes right now. And if you'd like to find out more about working with me or any of the products I have to help you start, grow, or scale your property management business, head to my website, thatpropertymum.com.au, or check out the links in the show notes.